There are moments in television when the carefully scripted flow of entertainment gives way to something far more profound and unexpected. On a Tuesday afternoon in May 2024, Family Feud was recording what appeared to be a routine episode featuring two enthusiastic families competing for prize money and the opportunity to appear on national television. The studio lights illuminated the familiar set, the audience filled the stands with their customary energy, and Steve Harvey prepared to guide contestants through the format that had made the show a beloved fixture in American households for generations. However, one contestant was carrying a secret so significant that when she finally summoned the courage to reveal it during the taping, her words would halt production entirely, transform the atmosphere in the studio from playful competition to profound emotional reckoning, and ultimately demonstrate that the bonds of family extend far beyond biology and legal definitions. What transpired during those remarkable minutes proved that truth, when delivered with courage and love, possesses the power to heal wounds that have persisted across decades and to create connections that transcend the circumstances of birth and separation. If you value authentic moments of family reconciliation and the courage it requires to speak difficult truths, please take a moment to support this channel by clicking the like button and subscribing. The story you are about to experience demonstrates why chosen family and biological family can coexist in ways that honor everyone involved. Amanda Chen was 38 years old and had spent her entire conscious life navigating the complicated terrain between gratitude and longing that characterizes many adoption experiences. She had been adopted as an infant by Thomas and Linda Chen, a loving couple who had struggled with infertility for years before choosing to build their family through adoption. The Chens had provided Amanda with a stable, nurturing childhood in Portland, Oregon. They ensured she received excellent education, supported her interests and ambitions, and created a home environment characterized by warmth and unconditional acceptance. Amanda understood from a very young age that she had been chosen and wanted, that her adoptive parents had deliberately created space in their lives specifically for her. This knowledge formed a foundation of security that shaped her development into a confident, accomplished adult. Thomas Chen had worked as an architect, and Linda had been a nurse before transitioning to part-time work when Amanda joined their family. They had been intentional about creating an open adoption narrative, always speaking honestly with Amanda about her adoption and emphasizing that being adopted was simply one aspect of her story rather than something shameful or problematic that required hiding. They celebrated her adoption day each year alongside her birthday, acknowledging both the day she was born and the day she became part of their family. This approach had allowed Amanda to integrate her adoption into her identity in healthy ways, understanding that having been adopted did not diminish her worth or her belonging within the Chen family. However, openness about adoption in general terms did not resolve all the questions that naturally arose as Amanda matured. She wondered about her biological parents, about the circumstances that had led to her adoption, and about whether she had biological siblings somewhere in the world. The Chens had limited information to provide because Amanda's adoption had been what was termed a closed adoption, meaning that identifying information about her biological family had been sealed and was not accessible without legal intervention. Her adoptive parents knew only that her biological mother had been young and unmarried when Amanda was born, that the decision to place Amanda for adoption had been made before her birth, and that the biological father had not been involved in the planning or decision-making process. Throughout her teenage years and into early adulthood, Amanda experienced waves of curiosity about her origins that would intensify and then recede. During periods of significant life transitions, such as graduating from high school, starting college, or beginning her career, she found herself wondering about the people whose genetics she carried and whether they ever thought about her. She would sometimes study her reflection in mirrors, searching for features that might provide clues about her biological heritage. She wondered if she resembled her biological mother or father, if her artistic abilities or her analytical thinking patterns had been inherited from people she had never met. The Chens encouraged Amanda to pursue information about her biological family if that felt important to her, always emphasizing that seeking such connections would not threaten or diminish their relationship with her. They understood that adoptees often needed to explore their origins as part of forming complete identities, and they wanted Amanda to feel free to undertake that exploration without guilt or fear about hurting them. However, for many years Amanda chose not to pursue active searching, partly because the logistics seemed daunting and partly because she worried about what she might discover or fail to discover. Amanda completed her education, earning a degree in graphic design, and established a successful career creating visual content for marketing agencies. She married her husband David when she was 29, and together they built a good life characterized by professional satisfaction, strong friendships, and active involvement in their community. They purchased a modest home, traveled when finances allowed, and discussed plans for eventually starting their own family. Amanda's relationship with her adoptive parents remained strong and supportive. Thomas and Linda Chen were devoted grandparents to Amanda's 2 children, and the family gathered regularly for dinners and celebrations. However, the questions about Amanda's biological origins never entirely disappeared. They persisted as a quiet undercurrent in her consciousness, occasionally surfacing during moments when genetic information seemed relevant or when she observed her own children and wondered about the traits they had inherited through her biological lineage. When Amanda turned 35, she made the decision to pursue more active searching. Advances in DNA testing technology and changes in adoption law had made it increasingly feasible for adoptees to locate biological family members if those family members were also seeking connection. Amanda submitted her DNA to one of the commercial ancestry databases, understanding that this action might lead to discoveries or might yield no useful information. She tried to maintain reasonable expectations, knowing that her biological parents might not have submitted their own DNA, might not be interested in contact even if identified, or might have passed away in the decades since her birth. She told herself that whatever she discovered or failed to discover would be acceptable, that she was simply gathering information rather than seeking to replace or diminish the family relationships she already cherished. 6 months after submitting her DNA, Amanda received notification that the database had identified several genetic relatives. The closest match was labeled as a first-degree relative, which meant either a parent or a sibling. Amanda stared at the notification for several minutes, her heart racing as she processed what this might mean. She had found someone who shared her genetic material, someone who might be able to answer questions she had carried for 38 years. Amanda initiated contact through the database's messaging system, composing and deleting several draft messages before finally sending one that simply explained who she was, when and where she had been born, and that she had been placed for adoption as an infant. She asked if the person who had matched with her DNA might have any information that could help her understand her biological origins. She emphasized that she had been raised in a loving adoptive family and was not seeking anything beyond information and possible connection. The response came within 48 hours, and its contents fundamentally altered Amanda's understanding of her history. The message was from a woman named Sarah Martinez, who explained that she was Amanda's biological mother. Sarah wrote that she had been 17 years old when Amanda was born, still in high school and completely unprepared for parenthood. The decision to place Amanda for adoption had been made jointly with Sarah's parents, who had insisted that adoption was the only responsible choice given Sarah's age and circumstances. Sarah explained that she had thought about Amanda constantly over the intervening decades, had wondered whether the decision had been correct, and had hoped that Amanda's life had been good. Sarah's message included information that Amanda had never known. She had been born in a hospital in Eugene, Oregon. Her biological father had been Sarah's high school boyfriend, but he had ended the relationship when he learned about the pregnancy and had not been involved in any subsequent decisions. Sarah had gone on to complete her education, had eventually married, and had 2 other children, which meant Amanda had biological half-siblings. Sarah wrote that she had submitted her DNA to the database specifically hoping that Amanda might someday do the same and that they might find each other. She expressed hope that Amanda would be willing to meet, and to allow Sarah the opportunity to explain the circumstances of her birth and adoption more fully. Amanda was overwhelmed by the information and by the emotions that accompanied it. She shared the message with David and with her adoptive parents, all of whom expressed support for whatever level of contact Amanda chose to pursue. The Chens reiterated that they understood Amanda's need to explore this connection and that doing so did not threaten their relationship with her in any way. Amanda decided to respond to Sarah's message positively, agreeing to meet and to begin building some form of relationship. The initial meeting between Amanda and Sarah took place at a coffee shop halfway between their respective homes, a neutral location that allowed either person to leave if the encounter became too uncomfortable. Amanda brought her husband for support, and Sarah came alone, having explained that she wanted this first meeting to focus on the two of them without the complication of introducing other family members immediately. The conversation was emotional and sometimes awkward as two strangers who shared genetic connection but no shared history attempted to bridge decades of separation. Sarah explained the circumstances of Amanda's conception and birth in detail, providing context that helped Amanda understand the choices that had been made. Sarah had been a good student with plans for college when she became pregnant. Her family had been working class and Catholic, and while abortion had been discussed, it had ultimately been rejected as incompatible with their religious values. Adoption had seemed like the solution that would allow Amanda to have opportunities that Sarah could not provide, while also allowing Sarah to complete her education and build the life she had planned. Sarah emphasized that the decision had been made out of love and a desire to give Amanda the best possible chance, even though it had caused Sarah profound grief that had never entirely healed. Amanda listened to Sarah's explanation and found that she felt compassion rather than anger. She understood intellectually that Sarah had been little more than a child herself when these decisions were made, that the options available to teenage mothers in the 1980s were limited, and that Sarah's choices had indeed resulted in Amanda having opportunities she might not have had otherwise. The Chens had provided Amanda with a stable, loving home and had ensured she received advantages that would have been difficult for a teenage mother to provide. However, understanding the logic of the decision did not entirely resolve Amanda's complicated feelings about having been separated from her biological family. Over the following months, Amanda and Sarah developed a tentative relationship characterized by regular communication and occasional meetings. Sarah introduced Amanda to her half-siblings, Emily, who was 32, and Michael, who was 28. Both siblings expressed excitement about discovering they had an older sister and welcomed Amanda into their family dynamics. Emily and Michael shared photographs from their childhood and explained family traditions and inside jokes that Amanda had not been part of, but could now appreciate. The Martinez family made efforts to include Amanda in their gatherings and celebrations, creating space for her within their established patterns. However, integrating into the Martinez family as an adult was complicated in ways that Amanda had not fully anticipated. She carried no childhood memories of Sarah or her siblings. She had not been shaped by the Martinez family culture or values in the way that Emily and Michael had been. She sometimes felt like an observer studying a family from the outside rather than a true member participating from within. The Martinez family had their own history that Amanda had not been part of, their own shared experiences and references that predated her arrival in their lives. Building connection required patience and intentional effort from everyone involved. It was during this period of building relationships with her biological family that Amanda's adoptive mother, Linda, mentioned having seen an advertisement for Family Feud auditions. Linda suggested in her characteristically thoughtful way that perhaps appearing on Family Feud might provide Amanda's two families with an opportunity to come together in a shared experience. Amanda initially dismissed the idea, unable to imagine how such an arrangement would work logistically or emotionally. However, as she considered the suggestion further, she began to see potential value in creating a shared positive experience that might help bridge the gap between her two families. Amanda discussed the possibility with David, with her adoptive parents, and tentatively with Sarah. The logistics seemed impossible at first. Family Feud required 5 family members, and Amanda's situation involved 2 distinct families who had little connection to each other beyond their shared connection to her. However, after multiple conversations and considerable planning, a solution emerged. Amanda would compete with Sarah, Emily, Michael, and David. Her adoptive parents would attend the taping as supporters but would not be on stage as competitors. This arrangement would allow Amanda to honor her biological family connections while also ensuring that Thomas and Linda were present to witness the experience. The application was submitted with full disclosure about the family's complicated dynamics. To everyone's surprise, the Family Feud producers found the story compelling and selected them for a taping scheduled for May 2024. The producers understood that this was not a typical family dynamic and made accommodations to ensure that everyone involved felt comfortable and supported. Amanda found herself simultaneously excited about the opportunity and anxious about the many ways the experience might become complicated or uncomfortable. As the taping date approached, Amanda made a decision that she shared only with David initially. If the opportunity arose during the taping, if the moment felt right, she would reveal the true nature of her relationship with the people she was competing alongside. She would explain her adoption, her recent reunion with her biological family, and the significance of their appearance together on Family Feud. She could not predict how such a revelation would be received by Steve Harvey, by the studio audience, or by viewers who would eventually watch the episode. However, she felt that appearing on national television with her biological family while maintaining pretense about the nature of their relationships would be fundamentally dishonest in ways that made her uncomfortable. The group that would compete as the Martinez-Chen family arrived at the Family Feud studio on the designated Tuesday morning. Amanda had insisted they be identified using both family names, a compromise that acknowledged her dual heritage without requiring lengthy explanation during introductions. Sarah, Emily, and Michael appeared nervous but excited, dressed in the coordinating burgundy and navy outfits that Emily had selected for the group. David provided steady support to Amanda, understanding the emotional complexity of what she was experiencing. Thomas and Linda Chen took their places in the studio audience, having assured Amanda that they were comfortable with the arrangement and supportive of her building relationships with her biological family. Their opponents were the Williams family from Atlanta, an energetic and entertaining group who brought considerable enthusiasm to the competition. Steve Harvey opened the show with his characteristic humor and began the standard introductions. When he reached the Martinez-Chen family, he paused slightly at the hyphenated name but proceeded with his typical warm greeting, asking them to introduce themselves and explain where they were from. Amanda had prepared a brief explanation that acknowledged they represented both Oregon and California, but that avoided details about the family structure. Steve seemed satisfied with the response and moved forward with beginning the game. The first question asked families to name something people collect. Michael buzzed in for the Martinez-Chen team and answered correctly with coins, which appeared on the board. The family played through the question successfully, demonstrating good chemistry and effective communication despite the relative newness of their relationships. The second round presented a question about important family traditions. Emily buzzed in and answered, "Holiday dinners," which was the #1 response. As the family played through various answers, Amanda felt increasing discomfort with the pretense they were maintaining. The Williams family was clearly a traditional nuclear family who had grown up together and shared decades of history. The Martinez-Chen configuration was fundamentally different, and pretending otherwise felt increasingly wrong to Amanda as the game progressed. When it was Amanda's turn to answer, Steve asked her specifically about her own family traditions. Amanda hesitated, glancing at Sarah, and then at her adoptive parents in the audience. She gave an answer that was technically accurate but felt incomplete, mentioning celebrations that she had experienced with the Chens while not acknowledging that these traditions were separate from anything the Martinez family practiced. The answer was on the board, but Amanda felt dissatisfied with her response in ways that had nothing to do with scoring points. The game continued through several more rounds. The Martinez-Chen family performed adequately, winning some rounds and losing others. The Williams family proved to be strong competitors with excellent chemistry and quick thinking. However, the competitive aspect of the game felt increasingly secondary to Amanda. She found herself preoccupied with the deception they were maintaining, with the implication that the 5 people standing together as a family unit had the kind of shared history that most families competing on game shows possessed. During a commercial break, Steve Harvey walked over to the Martinez-Chen team to engage in his customary banter with contestants. He asked Amanda directly about what it was like competing alongside her family members. The question, innocent and routine, created an opening that Amanda had not anticipated but suddenly recognized as the opportunity she had been waiting for. She looked at Sarah, at Emily and Michael, at David standing supportively beside her, and at her adoptive parents watching from the audience. She made a decision in that moment that would fundamentally alter the remainder of the taping. "Steve, before we continue, I need to tell you something," Amanda said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I need to tell you the truth about this family." Steve's expression shifted from casual interest to focused attention. He held his cards loosely at his side and gave Amanda his complete concentration. The studio audience quieted, sensing that something significant was about to occur. Amanda took a breath and began speaking, aware that cameras were still rolling and that her words would be heard by everyone present. "The woman standing next to me is named Sarah Martinez. She is my biological mother. These are my half-siblings Emily and Michael. I met them for the first time 8 months ago after spending 38 years not knowing who they were or where they were." The studio fell completely silent. Steve Harvey stood very still, processing what Amanda had just revealed. The Williams family looked stunned. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, though she remained composed. Amanda continued, needing to complete the explanation now that she had begun. "I was adopted as an infant and raised by Thomas and Linda Chen, who are sitting in the audience right now. They gave me an incredible life filled with love and opportunity. They are my parents in every meaningful sense of that word. However, I always wondered about my biological origins, about the people whose genes I carry, about whether I had siblings somewhere in the world." She gestured towards Sarah, Emily, and Michael. "I found them through DNA testing 6 months ago. We have been building relationships since then, trying to figure out how to be family when we did not grow up together and share no common memories." Steve Harvey moved closer to Amanda, his expression reflecting a mixture of surprise and compassion. "So when you applied to be on this show, you had only known your biological family for a few months?" Amanda nodded. "We thought that appearing together might help us create a shared experience, something positive that we could all be part of together. However, I realized as we were competing that I could not continue pretending we are a traditional family. I could not stand here and answer questions about family traditions and shared history while maintaining a fiction about who we actually are to each other." Steve turned to look at Sarah, at Emily and Michael, and then back at Amanda. "That took courage," he said simply. "That took real courage to stand here on national television and tell the truth when it would have been much easier to just play the game and not say anything." He paused, collecting his thoughts, before continuing. "Amanda, talk to me about your adoptive parents. They are here in the audience watching you compete with your biological family. How do they feel about all this?" Amanda turned to look directly at Thomas and Linda Chen, who were both crying openly in the audience. "They have been nothing but supportive," Amanda said, her own voice breaking. "They encouraged me to search for my biological family. They welcomed Sarah and my siblings into their lives without resentment or fear. They understood that I needed to know where I came from, and that finding those answers would not diminish my love for them or my gratitude for the life they gave me." Steve invited Thomas and Linda to join them on stage. The Chens made their way down from the audience, and when they reached the stage, Thomas embraced Amanda tightly while Linda reached out to touch Sarah's arm in a gesture of acknowledgement and respect. The moment was profound in its simplicity. Two mothers, connected through their shared love for the same person, standing together without competition or animosity. Steve Harvey addressed Thomas and Linda directly. "I need you to help me understand something. Your daughter just revealed that she is standing here competing with her biological family, people she met less than a year ago. That has to bring up complicated feelings. Talk to me about what you are experiencing right now." Thomas Chen took a moment to compose himself before responding. His words carried the wisdom and emotional maturity that had characterized his parenting throughout Amanda's life. "When we adopted Amanda 38 years ago, we knew that someday she might want to find her biological family," Thomas said. "We knew that being adopted was part of her story and that she might need to explore that part of her identity. We never wanted her to feel that seeking those connections would hurt us or would mean she was rejecting the family we had built together." He looked at Amanda with evident love. "Watching her build relationships with Sarah and Emily and Michael has been beautiful. We are not losing a daughter. We are gaining more people who love her. That is something to celebrate, not to fear." Linda Chen added her own perspective, speaking directly to Sarah. "I want to thank you for making the choice you made 38 years ago. I know it must have been impossibly difficult to place your baby for adoption. However, that choice allowed us to become parents, and Amanda has brought more joy into our lives than we could ever adequately express. I am grateful to you for that gift, and I am grateful that you are now able to be part of Amanda's life in ways that were not possible when she was born." Sarah was crying now, overwhelmed by the grace and generosity being expressed by the people who had raised her biological daughter. "I think about her every single day for 38 years, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "I wondered if I had made the right choice. I wondered if she was happy, if she was healthy, if she knew she was loved. Finding her, meeting Tom and Linda, seeing the incredible life they gave her has been the greatest gift. They did everything I hoped someone would do for my baby. They loved her completely." Steve Harvey stood among this assembled group, his usual performance persona entirely absent, replaced by genuine human response to witnessing something extraordinary. When he spoke, his words reflected the significance of what everyone present was experiencing. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we are witnessing right here is what family should look like. Not competition, not exclusion, not demanding that people choose, but room for everyone, space for all the people who love you, grace and generosity instead of fear and possessiveness." He continued, addressing the studio audience and the cameras. Amanda was afraid to tell the truth about her family. She was worried about how people would respond, about whether it would create problems or complications. However, by telling the truth, by being honest about her adoption and her reunion with her biological family, she created this moment right here, a moment that shows us that family is not about biology or law. It is about love, and there is always room for more love. Steve made an announcement to the production team. "We are going to take a break. We are going to give this family some time to process what just happened. And when we come back, we are going to finish this game because Amanda deserves to complete what she started with her family, both of her families." The taping resumed after an extended break during which the Martinez-Chen family, the Chen parents, and Steve Harvey spent time talking off camera about what had transpired and what it meant to everyone involved. The production team made accommodations to include Thomas and Linda in the remaining portions of the taping, creating space for them on stage even though they were not official competitors. The decision reflected recognition that this episode had become about something more significant than standard game show protocols. The Martinez-Chen family ultimately lost the main game to the Williams family, who competed with grace and evident respect for what the other family was experiencing. However, the outcome of the competition felt entirely secondary to what had been revealed and processed during the taping. Steve Harvey acknowledged at the end that while one family would leave with prize money, both families had experienced something more valuable than anything the show typically provided. After the official taping concluded, Steve requested that everyone remain for additional filming that might be used as part of the episode or as supplemental content. The extended conversation that followed covered topics that rarely received attention on game shows. The complexity of adoption relationships, the challenge of integrating biological families discovered later in life, the courage required to build connections across decades of separation, and the generosity of adoptive parents who support their children's searches for biological origins. Sarah shared more details about her decision to place Amanda for adoption, emphasizing that the choice had been made because she wanted Amanda to have opportunities that a teenage mother could not provide. She explained that she had completed college, had built a career as a social worker, and had eventually married and had 2 more children. However, Amanda had never been forgotten or replaced. Sarah had thought about her constantly and had hoped that someday they might find each other. Thomas and Linda Chen talked about their journey to parenthood through adoption, about the joy Amanda had brought to their lives, and about their deliberate choice to maintain openness about adoption, even when that openness meant acknowledging that Amanda might someday seek her biological family. They emphasized that loving Amanda had never felt like a temporary arrangement that might be threatened by her biological family's return to her life. Rather, they had always understood that Amanda's adoption was permanent and secure regardless of whether she developed relationships with her biological relatives. Emily and Michael spoke about learning they had an older sister they had never known existed, and about the excitement and strangeness of building sibling relationships as adults. They acknowledged that their connection with Amanda was different from traditional sibling relationships because they shared no childhood memories or formative experiences. However, they expressed commitment to building meaningful relationships with Amanda despite the challenges inherent in their unusual circumstances. The episode aired 3 months after the taping, and the production team had made the decision to include substantial portions of Amanda's revelation and the conversations that followed. They titled the episode, "When Family Finds Family," and used it as an opportunity to highlight the diverse ways that families form and the possibility of expanding family circles rather than limiting them to either biological or adoptive connections exclusively. The response to the episode was immediate and extraordinary. Adoption organizations reported receiving thousands of inquiries from adoptees interested in searching for biological family members and from biological parents hoping to reconnect with children they had placed for adoption. Mental health professionals specializing in adoption issues praised the episode for presenting adoption as a complex experience that could include both gratitude for adoptive families and curiosity about biological origins, without those feelings being mutually exclusive or contradictory. The episode sparked broader cultural conversations about adoption, about the rights of adoptees to access information about their origins, and about the ways that adoption policy and practice had evolved over recent decades. Many viewers shared their own adoption stories, expressing gratitude that mainstream media was presenting adoption in nuanced ways that acknowledged complexity rather than defaulting to oversimplified narratives about adoption being either entirely wonderful or inherently traumatic. Thomas and Linda Chen received particular recognition for their response to Amanda's reunion with her biological family. Parenting organizations highlighted their example as a model for adoptive parents navigating their children's searches for biological connections. The Chen's willingness to support Amanda's relationship building with the Martinez family, their lack of defensiveness or possessiveness, and their genuine warmth towards Sarah demonstrated what secure attachment and confident parenting could accomplish. Sarah Martinez became an unexpected advocate for young women facing unplanned pregnancies, speaking at community organizations about her experience and about the importance of ensuring that women have access to full information about all available options including parenting, adoption, and abortion. She emphasized that her decision to place Amanda for adoption had been made in a specific context and might not be the right choice for others facing similar circumstances. However, she wanted young women to know that if they did choose adoption, that choice could be made out of love and could result in positive outcomes, even though it also involved grief and loss that might persist across decades. Amanda herself found that her story resonated with many people navigating complicated family situations. She received messages from adoptees around the world expressing gratitude that her experience had been shared so openly. She heard from adoptive parents who felt validated in supporting their children's searches for biological connections. She connected with biological parents who had placed children for adoption and who took comfort in seeing that reunion and relationship building were possible even after decades of separation. 1 year after the episode aired, Family Feud invited the Martinez, Chen family and the Chen parents to return for a follow-up segment. The update revealed that relationships among all family members had continued to develop and deepen. Amanda described regular contact with Sarah, Emily, and Michael, including visits, phone calls, and shared celebrations. The Martinez family had been incorporated into the Chen family's holiday traditions in ways that honored both families' importance in Amanda's life. Most significantly, Amanda shared that her children, who were now old enough to understand the complexities of their mother's family situation, had developed relationships with both sets of grandparents and with their aunts and uncles on both sides. The children's experience of family included Thomas and Linda Chen as their primary grandparents given the years of close relationship already established, but also now included Sarah Martinez as an additional grandmother and Emily and Michael as additional aunt and uncle. The expansion of family had enriched the children's lives rather than creating confusion or divided loyalties. Sarah expressed profound gratitude for the ways the Chen family had welcomed her and her children into Amanda's life without resentment or competition. She acknowledged that many reunion situations involved conflict or difficulty, but that the Chen's security in their relationship with Amanda had created space for Sarah to build her own connection with her biological daughter without threatening existing bonds. The relationship between Sarah and the Chens had evolved into genuine friendship characterized by mutual respect and shared love for Amanda. Steve Harvey reflected on the episode during the follow-up segment, noting that it had become one of the most meaningful experiences of his career in television. He emphasized that Amanda's courage in revealing the truth about her family during the initial taping had created opportunities for honest conversation about adoption that might not have occurred otherwise. He reiterated his belief that families should be expansive rather than restrictive, and that love multiplies rather than divides when people approach relationships with generosity rather than fear. The broader impact of the episode continued to manifest in various ways over subsequent years. Adoption agencies reported changes in how they counseled prospective adoptive parents about openness and about supporting potential future searches. Educational institutions incorporated the episode into curricula addressing family diversity and the many configurations that families can take. Mental health professionals used the episode as a teaching tool for discussing healthy attachment and secure versus anxious responses to relationship complexity. 5 years after the episode aired, Amanda published a memoir about her experience titled Both and My Journey Through Adoption and Reunion. The book provided detailed exploration of the emotional complexity inherent in discovering biological family as an adult adoptee, in integrating new relationships with established family bonds, and in navigating the guilt that many adoptees experience about wanting to know their biological origins, despite having been raised in loving adoptive families. The memoir found substantial readership among people touched by adoption in various capacities and became required reading in many social work programs training professionals who would work with adoption-affected families. The relationship between Amanda and Sarah evolved into something deeper and more nuanced than either had anticipated when they first connected through the DNA database. They discovered shared interests and values that suggested some combination of genetic predisposition and universal human experiences. Sarah provided Amanda with medical history information that proved valuable when Amanda developed health concerns that had genetic components. Amanda introduced Sarah to activities and perspectives that enriched Sarah's understanding of the world. Their connection was neither simple nor uncomplicated, but it was genuine and valuable to both women. Thomas and Linda Chen lived to see their daughter build bridges between her two families and to witness their grandchildren benefit from expanded family networks. They expressed consistent pride in Amanda's courage and in her capacity to love multiple people without that love diminishing anyone. The Chen's example inspired other adoptive parents to support their children's searches for biological connections, without fear that such support would threaten their own relationships with their children. 10 years after that May afternoon when Amanda revealed the truth about her family on the Family Feud stage, the episode remained one of the most referenced and discussed in the show's history. It had transcended its origin as a game show moment and had become a cultural reference point for conversations about adoption, about family complexity, and about the possibility of building inclusive family structures that honor multiple connections rather than forcing people to choose between them. The story demonstrated that truth-telling, even when that truth is complicated and might create discomfort, ultimately serves relationships better than maintaining comfortable fictions. Amanda's decision to reveal her adoption and her recent reunion with her biological family had required courage, but that courage had created opportunities for authentic connection and for modeling what generous, secure family relationships could accomplish. Her revelation had shown that families need not be limited to either biological or chosen configurations, but could encompass both in ways that enriched everyone involved. If this story has resonated with you, if you recognize the importance of expansive rather than exclusive approaches to family, and the courage required to tell complicated truths, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with someone who might benefit from seeing that families can take many forms and that love need not be rationed or restricted. Amanda's courage in speaking the truth about her family during that Family Feud taping demonstrated that honesty, even when difficult, creates foundations for authentic relationships that pretense and performance can never achieve. The grace demonstrated by Thomas and Linda Chen in welcoming Amanda's biological family into their lives proved that secure love does not feel threatened by the presence of additional people who care about the same person, and the reunion between Amanda and Sarah showed that connections severed by circumstances decades earlier can be rebuilt when people approach that rebuilding with patience, compassion, and commitment to honoring complexity rather than demanding simplicity. Family, in its fullest expression, is not about choosing sides or maintaining boundaries, but about creating space for all the people who love you and whom you love in return.